Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad that you could join us today for this Wednesday, July 25th, 2001 broadcast. Tyranny is enveloping the globe, and the United States is a shining jewel the globalists want to bring down, and they will use terrorism as the pretext to get it done. So that's coming up in the second half of the show. Very important information. I'm going to put the call out that you call the White House and tell them, look, we've seen the news stories that you've wanted to blow things up, that you have blown things up, and that you're saying that 4 million of us are going to die and we need martial law and the Associated Press at one of your little drills you had, and that we're aware of who the terrorists are if you pull this. This can stop this Hitlerian Reichstag event. I want to put the toll-free number up for Congress. And I won't want you to believe Alex Jones. I want you to go get these news stories off my website. I want you to call these major newspapers. I want you to find out these statements were true by the White House about preparing for martial law. And I want you to let them know that if there is any terrorism, we know who to blame. The point is, if any terrorism comes, it's from this government. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s, running the Mujahideen war, and whose family builds all the military bases over in Saudi Arabia right now, and sits on the board of Iridium Satellite, he's the boogeyman they need in this Orwellian phony system. I want the White House numbers up there now. A big part of this solution, after you research all the government terrorism and check out what I'm saying is true, call the White House and tell them, we know the government's planning terrorism. We know Oklahoma City and World Trade Center was terrorism. We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun. If you do it, we're going to blame you because we know who's up to it. Or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And you could save the planet. I'm calling it Operation Expose the Government Terror.
Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got in to Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking. And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. When in hell are all you people going to wake up?
examination of the building's steel beams and columns could have shown whether explosives had been used to slice them, but virtually all of the steel was removed before it could be properly investigated, then put on ships to Asia to be melted down.
It's important for us to not reveal how we collect information. That's what the enemy wants.
And you have no evidence that the government's behind 9/11, and I frankly think it's an awful thing to allege, considering it's not true and you haven't proved that it is. It's totally implausible. Like, we would report that if that were true.
Because these guys own our government. They print our money, and they own not only the government, but they own you. You are their property. So, in other words, these guys print the money, they run the country, and they own you, and they own everything around it. And so they make the laws, and that's why they can decide who can kill who, and who can get away with who, and who can get away with whatever, because they make the laws and they decide, all right?
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today because of, course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working properly. And we know that down there near the World Trade Center there are 3 schools that are being turned into triage centers for emergency treatment. And I know that over in New York Harbor, where the famous Statue of Liberty...
Yes, I am the king. Numero uno, baby.
Find something?
Yeah, I wound up in some government think tank's upload directory. Here's your scenarios, ladies.
These look like counterterrorism scenarios, war games developed for the Defense Department.
What's scenario 12D?
Airline terrorism? That doesn't make sense. Your father was murdered over a war game?
Download it.
Why can't you stay out of this? Leave me buried.
What is scenario 12D? We know it's a war game scenario, that it has to do with airline counterterrorism. Why is that important enough to kill for?
Because it's no longer a game.
If some terrorist group wants to act out this scenario, why target you for assassination?
Depends on who your terrorists are.
The men who conceived of it in the first place. You're saying our government plans to commit a terrorist act against a domestic airline?
There you go. Indicting the entire government as usual. It's a faction. A small faction.
For what possible gain?
The Cold War's over, John. But with no clear enemy to stockpile against, the arms market's flat. But bring down a fully loaded 727 into the middle of New York City, and you'll find a dozen tin-pot dictators all over the world just clamoring to take responsibility. And begging to be smart-bombed.
I can't believe it. This is about increasing arms sales.
Mm-hmm.
When?
Tonight?
How are you going to stop them? Why didn't you tell the world this? Go to the press.
You think I'd still be drawing breath 30 minutes after I made that call? The press? Who's going to run this story?
We would.
This? This is birdcage liner. Wild-eyed crap right up there with Elvis as an alien and two-headed babies.
You obviously read it.
Don't be so damn naive. You think this is going to save the world?
Details are surfacing about that superhuman force that took down bin Laden, the Navy SEALs known as Team 6, a force so elite you cannot apply to join their ranks, you are just silently recruited. These men who say they are trained to move in when others flee. And tonight, Chris Cuomo is here. He knows a lot about their world. Chris.
You know, Diane, as impressive as the details of the bin Laden operation are, you really start to appreciate how special these SEALs are when you learn that taking out bin Laden was just another day at the office.
The dogs of war were finally turned loose to do what they were designed to do.
Designed to be the best anywhere doing anything, whether sea, air, or land. That's what SEAL stands for.
It's a self-contained unit that can go any place in the world and literally do nothing but kick ass.
A superhero has nothing on these guys. Recruits are trained to swim 350 feet underwater with their hands and feet bound. They're taught to survive in Arctic conditions, even submerging in freezing water. They also have to endure exposure to tear gas. Only men ranging in age from 26 to 33 try out to become one of the 2,500 SEALs. Training takes 2 years. 75% don't make it through. Even if they do, they need years more experience in the field to even be considered for the elite squad that double-tapped bin Laden, Team 6.
Killing bin Laden. At 11:35 p.m. May 1st, Sunday evening, President Obama makes the stunning announcement.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
USA! USA! Celebrations erupt throughout the country, and everyone is eager to hear the details about the mission. But unknown to the public at the time, the last parts of the mission are still taking place. The SEALs transport bin Laden to the USS Carl Vinson in the North Arabian Sea. And just under 12 hours after he is shot and killed, Osama bin Laden is buried at sea in conformance with Islamic tradition.
The body was placed on a prepared flat board, tipped up, and the deceased body eased into the sea.
We move him offshore, burial at sea, which is brilliant. I mean, there's no shrine, there's no location, no country has to deal with his body and have a tomb somewhere, which is just going to be a place for future jihadists to operate around.
Any place else you put him, he would have been a site for martyrs. Burying him at sea, there's no place for them to congregate.
U.S. officials confirm that most of them are members of the U.S. Navy's elite SEAL teams, and they believe the helicopter was shot down. Straight to Washington, D.C. now, and our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. Barbara, any new details about that helicopter crash? What do the officials think happened?
Well, indeed, Joe. At this point, 22 Navy SEALs have lost their lives. Many of them, most of them, we are told, members of the same overall unit, the covert unit of Navy SEALs that went after Osama bin Laden. Many of them, most of them, we are told, members of the same overall unit, the covert unit of Navy SEALs that went after Osama bin Laden, not the same exact.
We're not sure what caused this. It could possibly, and we emphasize possibly, have been a ground impact of a Scud. It could have been a ground impact of a Patriot, or it could have been the result of debris falling between the two of them. We just don't know right now, but we do know that at least 2 Scud missiles incoming were fired at Riyadh, and according to the Saudi military, they were both shot down. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia. was almost exactly 2 hours ago when the sirens went off here in Saudi Arabia. Where we are in eastern Saudi Arabia, there was no problem. However, there was an intercept elsewhere near the capital city, Riyadh. We've got some videotape of that you can take a look at right now. Hi, Atlanta. We're about to have a short course in missile identification. This is a Scud. You can tell it by its distinctive label. Now, when the missile is launched, the first thing you look for is the plume sticking out behind it. Now, when you detect this, you can tell it's been launched. Thank you.
Graffiti on it? Yeah, show me graffiti.
Larry King show or bust. Look at this.
Look
at this. Look at this shit. Look at.
Can you believe that? Let me say hi.
The top 10 things about Saudi Arabia. Maybe we could shorten the list to 5. Oh God, Geopolitics by Dan Quayle. Je suis un journaliste américain. Woof. Woof. Oh, I love this country so much.
You guys just don't have a clue.
Well, Cheryl, it was almost exactly 2 hours ago when the sirens went off here in Saudi Arabia. Where we are in eastern Saudi Arabia, there was no problem. Now, let me just size my mask and fit it for a second, just like I always do. Stand by, please. All clear. They're... Shh. What are they saying? Are they saying all clear?
Yes, ma'am. I can't hear.
Were they saying all clear down there just now?
I didn't hear it. You understand? Okay.
All clear. All clear. Está bien was a false alarm. Got that, Atlanta? Standing down now. I'm gonna go get my hamburger and my coffee.
Good. We just got the all clear.
All clear. Every time I order something, this happens. All clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I'm starting to get real bothered by all this.
You ready?
Boy, did I almost look stupid. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia. No, wait a minute. Whoa, hold it, homeboy. I'm the talent here, you dig? Couple of explosions, what may have been an outgoing Patriot ground-to-air missile, some reported airbursts that may have been an intercept of an incoming Scud missile. We're really not sure. All we know is that the air raid sirens have gone off, and we've heard the outgoing roar of at least one Patriot missile. We've heard some sort of airburst. We can't tell where it was from where we are right now. We're waiting to see what's happening. As you can hear, the air raid sirens are still going off around us. People are, strangely enough, used to it. This is the first one of these attacks that's taken place early in the morning, but they're... we cannot show you anything other than what we've got now. What do you see there? Is that a missile going out? No? We're not quite sure. We can't show you anything else than what we're seeing right now. Because of military regulations, we are not allowed to show you where the missiles might be going, what direction they might be flying in, where the airbursts might be taking place. There's obviously something going on. We heard another dull roar that shook things a little bit, and we're waiting to see what else is going on. Right now, that's about all we know, that something is happening. We're hearing pops and things shaking, but people are staying relatively calm around here. People evacuated in an orderly way to the shelters, but apparently there is something going on. The Patriot missiles, we're assuming they're Patriots, have gone outbound, and we've heard some explosions, and that's about it for right now. We'll get back to you when we know something else. Something is happening here, and we're scanning the skies for something else coming in, but right now we can't see much of anything, and frankly, this is what we can show you on television right now because of military restrictions from both the Saudis and the U.S.
CD, if you need to take cover, I notice that you've got your gas mask in your hands. If you need to put it on, please do so. If you need to take cover, please do so. If you are able... if you are able to take a question, did you think that the possible threat would be over because it is now morning there? It's what, just after 6 o'clock in the morning?
The whole thing is everyone assumed that the threat would be over because it was early morning. But the thing about Saddam Hussein is that he has never done the expected, and right now we have, once again been surprised with the unexpected, an air raid, an apparent attack, although we can't say what the outgoing missiles hit, at approximately 20 after 7 in the morning Saudi Arabian time. All the other attacks have occurred from 10 o'clock at night till 3, 4 in the morning. This is the first one to take place in eastern Saudi Arabia during the daylight hours. Now, that sound you hear behind me is the hotel. Richard Thicker is not the national.
By afternoon.
So people are looking up in the skies, scanning the skies to see what they can see. Do we see much of anything out there? Can we see much of anything? Okay. Well, apparently there was some word of outgoing. Again, we cannot be specific about the direction. All right, we are now led to understand that there are also firings in another city in Saudi Arabia. CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me. He just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There is a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say... My apologies for that. He's putting on a gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here that we could tell.
You smell anything?
No. You may smell some of the fumes from a missile exhaust going off. The missile was used a rocket, a cordite, some sort of burning. We just heard a little thump just then. But
I have to apologize for that. I thought I whiffed at something and felt momentarily dizzy. You're more experienced in military affairs than I am, but it might have been a little gas from the rocket exhaust. There apparently wasn't anything. A lot of people have the respirators on just in case.
And again, you run to get down here. You, in my case, jumped out of bed, hearing the air raid warning go on. You run down 3 flights of stairs to get out of here. It's probably 100 yards. You hyperventilate a little bit, and you're nervous.
One thing we have to point out, just so people won't think people are panicking. Most people are in their shelters. They've taken cover in their shelters, and in the time we've been in Saudi Arabia, I've not seen any evidence of panic in the streets or people running around. People are not exactly taking this as a matter of course, but there's been no wholesale panic or anything. People are taking orderly precautions to deal with the threat that's going on right now.
Okay, again, everything seems to be quiet. What I saw when I walked down, when I came running down, someone had said there is a hit upstairs over our heads, right straight up above us. And I looked up, and you could see the vapor trail, the contrail that's made by an aircraft or a rocket at high altitude. And there was a round puff of smoke that indicated something happened at that point. A lot of smoke. It could be a hit from one of the Patriots taking down a Scud missile inbound, or taking down an aircraft for that matter. But right now, where we are, we have absolutely seen nothing happen. A little boom one time, a small boom, could have been the sound traveling from high on. That's not actually confirming that anything happened. We don't know that there is a hit or anything. We're just telling you what we think and what we see at this point. The air raid sirens are running. The air raid is going on. Could very well be something has happened, but we're all safe right here. The reason I'm wearing a helmet is because it's easier and safer to put it on your head than it is to carry it around in your hand. If you're just trying to be prudent, CD is carrying his gas mask with him. I have mine strapped on at my side. You'll get some indication that there is gas, and one of the indications that there has been gas, there'll be an explosion pretty close to you. There has to be a way to deliver it. As far as we know, they have not yet delivered any in a rocket vehicle, in a Scud-type vehicle down to this area or anywhere else. Could happen, but there should be plenty of warning on that.
Yeah, Carl, and again, I have to apologize for the audience for yelling gas and putting the gas mask on, but what happened, as Carl explained, is sometimes when the propellant goes off, I believe that's what it would be, to get this whiff of something. I felt momentarily choked up and dizzy and thought, well, better safe than sorry. And it turned out that was not the case. But again, that could have just been the propellant from the outgoing missile. We have seen streaks outgoing. We heard a bang. But as Carl said, there's no hard evidence that anything was hit. We know what we saw, but we can't speculate about what was in it or what it was. And so far, there's been no evidence that the Iraqis have been able to use chemical warheads in any of these scuds.
You're concerned about chemicals is certainly well taken. I've been through, at least 3 or 4 breathing fires.
Gentlemen?
Both the American military and the NATO military on this.
Gentlemen.
Yes.
Excuse me for breaking in. Charles J.
Stunning fakery in the alleged chemical weapons attack, according to a former UK ambassador. Coming up.
The British Broadcasting Corporation is accused of staging chemical weapons attack. The CIA admits planting CNN reporters. And international lawyers call for journalists inciting violence to be expelled.
August 2013, and NATO leaders can't get the public on side for the imminent bombing of Syria. Suddenly, the BBC says it was filming a small rural hospital, and a game-changing atrocity happens right there, the moment they were filming.
Last month, we were filming the doctors working at this hospital when victims of an incendiary bomb attack on a school playground started pouring in.
Absolute chaos and carnage here. It must be some sort of napalm.
But a highly skeptical public stayed hostile to military intervention. Exactly 1 month later, the leaders are trying to pin a chemical weapons attack on Syria without success. The BBC airs exactly the same footage but digitally alters the word napalm for, quote, chemical weapons, hoping no one will notice.
Absolute chaos and carnage here. It must be some sort of chemical weapon.
Not only did folks notice, but it unleashed a massive public investigation, which made some extremely disturbing findings.
This is the total fabrication. From beginning to end of an atrocity with BBC reporter Ian Pannell standing amidst a tableau of very bad actors. This is completely beyond the pale.
This audio analysis by media investigator Robin Upton shows both versions are identical and from the same speech. The BBC then digitally altered the words from napalm to chemical weapon, the exact justification NATO was finding difficult to prove. That game-changing allegation was made by 2 doctors that had travelled with the BBC, who claimed the number of sudden casualties is, quote, overwhelming. What kind of doctor, notes media investigator Robert Stewart, gives interviews when she is surrounded by supposedly seriously burned and dying teenagers?
Get anyone who isn't a patient out of here.
When a nurse does finally start to help, her order to get anyone who isn't a patient out of here doesn't apply to the cameramen. Even worse, notes Stewart, is the bizarre acting which starts when the man in the centre gives the sign.
What do you need to see? We are just human beings. We want to live, you know? Isn't it our right to live?
Dr. Roller, on whose sole claim the BBC sends napalm chemical weapons allegations around the world, is actually the daughter of Syrian rebel Musa al-Qadi. The parallel to the Gulf War and Nurse Naira is stunning. Congressman said the nurse's tearful testimony that Iraqis were killing children swung their vote in favor of war.
Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Nurse Naira became the mainstream's darling, but once the vote had safely passed, she admitted inventing the whole thing and was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, lying to get the public to back war. UK Member of Parliament George Galloway joins us. Thank you very much for coming on. Why do we get almost identical claims before each war, which then prove lies?
Well, the Bush and Blair Corporation, as it became in the run-up to the Iraq War, has almost entirely lost its reputation for journalistic integrity. A full inquiry must be launched into why the BBC used a piece of material which was not just wrong, but was falsified, and falsified with the purpose of propelling our country into war. That's not what the British public pays its BBC license fee for, so that it can be tricked into a war.
In a statement, the British Broadcasting Corporation says it stands by its report. The Syrian opposition denies the allegations. Investigators such as Robert Stewart note their many questions sent officially to the corporation remain unanswered. There are also numerous such precedents, both in this war and previous invasions. Brilliant is how a top Western official called tricking the public through routine faking of atrocities and commonly aired on mainstream bulletins. Nightly news shows just a few cases of what happened next after mainstream cameras ended their reports.
It shows people putting on, fake wounds. It shows there's some guys there. Look, there's their head wounds. Peace, everybody. We're doing the right thing. We're creating fake propaganda. I mean, it's not even real atrocities. So they're there lined up. There was another video that shows some guy kicking his leg and with a fake blood wound. Here's a guy who wakes up from his funeral. Watch this. They're reading. Oh, there. Oh, wait. There. Oh, he's awake. He's not even really dead. And so, I mean, this is just crazy what goes on. There was another video that was shot of a supposed massacre, and it cuts. You don't see the whole thing. When you go to the Al Jazeera footage, it shows real quick clips of a guy kicking his leg, and he's got blood coming out, which turned out to be fake blood.
The so-called activists behind the fakes are by far the most popular source, despite them never being verified and regularly disproved as fabrications to justify more NATO arms. The term activist may sound like a well-meaning Western campaigner or charity, but the Foreign Policy Journal notes it's just newspeak for insurgents. The official source on Syria casualties, or what mainstream claims is official, is impressive-sounding organization the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Reuters exposed the fact 3 years ago it was not an organization at all, or even working in Syria. It's a single pro-insurgent supporter living in Coventry, England. Here pictured at the Foreign Office after instructions from Britain's Foreign Minister himself. In leaked footage, ordinary Syrians told the BBC they're tired of its lies and the insurgents they're cheerleading are a tiny minority led by foreign gangs.
You don't like BBC?
BBC كله.
Why?
سيء. لا يعني BBC سيء.
Because you are talking very bad about Syria. Everybody when BBC Arabic he can hear the lie about Syria. Al Jazeera and Arabia.
But maybe Syria is like any country. Some people support and some people don't support.
No, everybody has support.
So Syria is different.
There is very little people. Maybe 10,000 like that. But the most of people, 22 million, 23 million persons support Bashar al-Assad.
But even
and we have not demonstration, we have armed gangs.
Pro-war media is forced to resort to colossal lies since intelligence chiefs revealed to America's top investigative reporter, Cy Hirsch, quote, Obama's cronies are making it up. All the evidence actually points to the jihadis staging the chemical attacks.
The attack was not the result of the current regime, the high-level intelligence officer wrote in an email to a colleague. The guys are throwing their hands in the air and saying, how can we help this guy, Obama, when he and his cronies in the White House make up the intelligence as they go along, said a former senior intelligence official. The distortion, he said, reminded him of the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
What?
The president wants a white one.
He wants a white one? A white? Let me talk.
He's mobilizing the 6th Fleet.
The thought a US president would start a horrific foreign war by staging a pretty female front as a victim made people laugh.
The young Albanian national fleeing in this video is attempting to escape terrorist reprisals in her village.
Meet Julia, if that's her real name, the celebrated face mass media call the creator of a viral video asking the US to help Ukraine. It was actually created by the State Department's National Endowment for Democracy to mask the fact Washington joined Ukraine's thugs and murdered their way to power. A leaked phone call with EU Foreign Minister Ashton revealed the opposition planned and executed the infamous sniper violence of Kiev, shooting both the police and their own supporters in the back. Study found a total of 250 mainstream sources lied that the snipers belonged to Yanukovych. Only 7 of the entire mass media even mentioned the bombshell leak and those that did framed the report to suggest it couldn't possibly be true. Former Wall Street Journal editor Paul Craig Roberts calls the coverage of Ukraine a new low in the history of the mainstream, which is now simply what he describes as a ministry of lies. Investigative reporter John Helmer's uncovered mainstream staging demonstrations and attempts to provoke disorder. He joins us. Great to speak to you. One US scholar notes the coverage has now become Orwellian. What's going on?
So the weaker your government, the more interested the leader might be in threatening Russia to look strong at home when it's obvious he's not strong at home and couldn't get re-elected. That's particularly true, let's say, of the French president or the Prime Minister Cameron at the moment. And arguably, President Obama is not only a lame duck, but having great difficulty in putting together a winning coalition for the Democratic Party's next candidate for president. When you've got weak political leaders, you need to look stronger than you are in public opinion in the media. So there's this process of misleading and disinforming.
The Senate committee inquiry revealed CIA running mainstream media in the vast operation known as Mockingbird. More than 400 journalists and media chiefs claiming to watchdog the government, with the exact opposite joining to masked US government crime at home and abroad. The operation continues despite agency denials. Counterpunch discovered CIA imposing agents on firms like CNN. Former CIA exec Michael Schur notes British media are even closer to intel targets.
Big pieces of wood, metal, to use as barricades.
Schur adds the BBC now takes the lead in regime change operations that cause, quote, anarchy and violence. Let's speak to Francis Boyle, Professor of International Law at Illinois University. Great to talk to you. How can nations stop war media that now perform the CIA's covert operations?
Certainly have their visas revoked and sent packing home, because I really don't understand why some of these countries keep, European journalists, certainly in the United States, why they let them into the countries. Because they're just using their coverage to promote war and military intervention at home. In addition, Bush Jr. administration lifted what was supposed to be the previous prohibition that intelligence agents were not supposed to infiltrate the media. You know, you have to be very careful, certainly dealing with U.S. reporters, whether or not they're intelligence agents.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Can the federal government take credit for saving us from a plot of its own creation? Tonight, has the federal government kept us safe, or does it just want us to think that it has kept us safe? Since the tragedy of 9/11, numerous crazies and low-level copycats have engaged in criminal behavior which they hoped would result in the deaths of innocent Americans and somehow advance their cause of jihad. If you ask the leadership of the FBI, most of whose field agents are tireless, dedicated, Constitution-supporting professionals, it will tell you that the FBI, has foiled about 17 plots to kill Americans during the past 10 years. What it will not tell you is that there have been 20 foiled plots, and of them, 3 were interrupted by members of the public. The 17 that were interrupted by the feds were created by the feds. We all remember the 3 that were foiled by diligent Americans: the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, and the Times Square bomber. In all of these cases, the crimes charged were those of attempting to kill and conspiring with others to do so. In all 3 of those cases, alert Americans on transcontinental flights or in the streets of New York City told authorities of bizarre behavior or actually subdued the threats themselves. There was no foiling by the FBI. The plotters were, thankfully, bumbling fools who had poorly planned their criminal behavior and who ended up harming no one. All 3 are serving life terms. But the more curious cases are the remaining 17 for which the federal government has taken credit. They all have a common and reprehensible thread. They were planned, plotted, controlled, and carried out by the federal government itself. In all of these 17 cases, from the Fort Dix 6 to the Lackawanna 7 to the Portland parade bomber, the feds found young men of Muslim backgrounds, loners who were bitter at America. They befriended them, cajoled them, and persuaded them that they could change the world by killing Americans. In all these cases, agents worked undercover and portrayed themselves to the targets as Arabs of like un-American mind. In some cases, the federal agents used third parties to act as middlemen. The third parties were typically persons who had been convicted of crimes and who, in return for leniency at their own sentencings, were willing to work with the same feds who prosecuted them in order to help the feds entrap whomever else those feds were pursuing. Thus, in all 17 of these cases, because of the command and control of federal agents, no one was ever in danger, no one was harmed, no bomb went off, and no property was damaged. But in all those cases, the losers whom the feds targeted each believed that they were interacting with real plotters who would bring them cash and bombs. As we know, sometimes the cash arrived, but the bombs never did. The defendants were essentially charged and convicted for playing a game with federal agents. The most recent of those government-generated plots was revealed yesterday. It has a new twist because it allegedly involves agents of the intelligence apparatus of the government of Iran. It, too, was destined to go nowhere, as the feds monitored and taped every move made by their target as he interacted with federal agents whom he stupidly believed to be drug dealers and co-conspirators. Today, the feds themselves revealed that high officials of Iran's government knew nothing of this. Of course, the neocons have demanded bombs on Tehran, no matter what the government there knew. And this plot came to light the day before Attorney General Holder himself was subpoenaed by Congress in the Fast and Furious case. You get the picture. Are any of these plots criminal? Can the government just pick and choose whom to seduce and then lower the boom at the right time and arrest its would-be Confederates? Is this a proper and efficient use of law enforcement resources? The answers to these questions are obvious, and they are not good. The courts have made this legal, so long as the target of these plots had a mental predisposition to cause harm. But none of this keeps us safe. All of this makes us less free, as any one of us can be entrapped. And we are fools if we praise the government for exposing a plot of its own creation and saving us from a danger that never existed. Can the government break the law in order to enforce it? Well, when it does, it becomes a law unto itself, and the rule of law dies as the feds decide whom to target and whom to trap. Think about it. Are we really safe in a false sense of security? Why do we pay the government to trick us into believing it is keeping us safe? When no one is harmed and the government controls the plot, aren't we just punishing someone for his thoughts? And in a free society, aren't free people free to think as they wish? This must be so. Because if the government can punish our thoughts, there are no limits to its power. From New York, defending freedom,